BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays. Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything. That's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show. And Friday is an Anything Goes. Any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. All right, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Monday, another Zodiac Monday. Welcome to the show. First, I would like to begin by giving a shout out to YouTube user SoCealist, who wrote in saying, P.S. I have an idea for a new video. In the past, you have made suspect rating videos for each known Zodiac suspects. Maybe you could do the same, but for the suspected crimes of the Zodiac Killer, such as Sheri Jo Bates, the Domingos-Edwards murders, Nikki Benedict, Kathleen Johns, with 0 meaning that they are definitive non-victim of the Zodiac, and 10 meaning that they are a definitive victim of the Zodiac. And that will be the subject of today's recording, and as you can hear, this is one that was requested by one of the listeners. If there's anything that you would like covered on the channel, you can put your idea in the comments section below, and perhaps I will get to it in a future video, but I have to tell you the topic list is getting very large. I did think that this was a good idea, and it's one that I've wanted to do for a while, because in 1968 and 69, there was a series of murders that was attributed to the Zodiac Killer. They're referred to as the canonical crimes, and those, I would like to begin by saying, are 10 out of 10, like Lake Herman Road, December 20th of 68, and Blue Rock Springs, Lake Berryessa, the Paul Stine murder in Presidio Heights, they would all be listed 10 out of 10. I'm convinced that that was Zodiac activity, and most people are, and I don't think that that is too heavily disputed. I mean, some people think that there was more than one person involved with those murders, or there's the Zodiac hoax theory out there, but it's not really highly debated that those crimes were not the actual Zodiac Killer. People just have different theories about them and the number of participants. But what about something like these crimes that are listed here? Are these genuine cases of Zodiac activity? And this is an important episode because it's not only the mystery of who was this perpetrator who committed these murders back in the 1960s and possibly 1970s, but also, is there this serial killer who has committed an enormous amount of crimes but deceived everybody, flew under the radar, duped everybody in law enforcement, was so careful and methodical that committed an enormous amount of murders between maybe as early as 1957, and that we will be discussing throughout this recording. But even the Socialist wrote out in this comment here, the first victim on the list is Sheri Jo Bates, and I think that would be an absolute great starting point. On October 30th, 1966, Sheri Jo Bates was murdered in Riverside, California, leaving the RCC library, that's Riverside City College. I'm going to give the murder of Sheri Jo Bates an 8 out of 10, meaning likelihood of being a Zodiac Killer victim. I, like many people, am not convinced that Sheri Jo Bates was actually murdered by the Zodiac Killer, but if you go over to ZodiacKiller.com, you will see that she is even listed as a confirmed victim. I still have to point out the major discrepancies, or the differences between the canonical Zodiac crimes and the murder of Sheri Jo Bates. That definitely appears to be one which is a little bit more vicious. I mean, she was stabbed numerous times in somewhat of a savage and brutal way. Also, there's tampering with her car, the famous letter that was mailed in, I removed the distributor coil from the car, and giving a shout out to Classic Chevy Cat Black, who wrote in saying, after the murder of Sheri Jo Bates, a series of letters were mailed. There are at least 3 copies of the letter that says Bates had to die, there will be more, and that's signed with a Z. I mean, that should definitely get you thinking about the Zodiac Killer, right? But then there's also the Riverside confession that says Miss Bates was stupid, she went to the slaughter like a lamb. That is being very personal, and it's practically intimate. It has that sense of criminal intimacy that you do not find with the other Zodiac Killer letters, such as, I am the murderer of the two teenagers at Lake Herman last Christmas and the girl on the 4th of July, or the phone call perhaps that came after Blue Rock Springs. I also killed those two kids last year. Goodbye. Those are not personal, and also the victims are not mentioned by name. I think there are just a few things that are a little bit different about Sheri Jo Bates compared to many of the other Zodiac killer victims. I'm still not convinced to this day that she was murdered by the Zodiac killer, but you hear 8 out of 10. I used to think much lower than that. I thought absolutely not. This is just the media reading into this. But if anything, Tom Voigt has convinced me that many people throughout the 1970s did believe that Sheri Jo Bates was a genuine Zodiac killer victim, and it's not so much that that media angle is true. That seems to be a little bit of more or less a fabrication. The authorities really thought there was a high chance that the same person committed the murder of Sheri Jo Bates as well as the five canonical murders that took place between 68 and 69. But moving on to the next one, I would like to talk about the Domingos-Edwards murders that took place on June 4th of 1963. This one, I'm going to give a 7.9 out of 10 likelihood of being part of the Zodiac killer crime sprees that took place. And you can see that that's just a little bit below the murder of Sheri Jo Bates. And I've said before in the episode, The Domingos-Edwards Murders, that you can hear on this channel, that I think that the Domingos-Edwards murders seems very similar to the Lake Berryessa stabbing gone wrong, September 20th of 69, with the Zodiac killers wearing the hood, attacking the victims by knife. It seems very similar to that crime if it had gone wrong. You even have a perpetrator approaching a man and a woman together who are by a body of water. In this case, they were on the beach near Gaviota State Park, but at Lake Berryessa, of course, they were by Lake Berryessa, hence the name. So this gets a 7.9 out of 10. In my heart and like gut instincts, right? If you're just going to go with your gut, I think that this is a higher crime. There's a higher likelihood that this crime is Zodiac activity, but it's all of the physical evidence that is different. There's so many differences about the murders at Gaviota compared to the other Zodiac killer incidents that took place in 68 and 69. Firstly, there is this 5-year time gap in between the incidents, and Michael Cole provided the explanation in Zodiac Revisited Volume 3 that perhaps it was a younger, inexperienced Zodiac killer who was unfamiliar with committing a crime, or a crime would not go so carefully as he had planned it. It wouldn't go according to plan, and that's why there are all these differences. The victim, Robert Domingos, fought back, punched the perpetrator in the face, perhaps even. They tried to run away, and then they were shot and gunned down. I believe the assailant at Gaviota fired 26 bullets, was it? Definitely more than any other Zodiac crime, but Michael Cole has that explanation, and I completely understand that, except for all the differences. The bodies were then dragged to a seaside shack, and the assailant attempted to set the shack on fire, striking matches and trying to light this kind of tarp that was draped over the seaside shack door. And then Linda Edwards' swimsuit was cut open and her breasts were revealed. All of those things are just not present in the Zodiac crimes. And I say this because the Zodiac did not move the victims, with the exception of perhaps moving Paul Stine's body around in the taxicab. But even in the book The Myth of the Zodiac Killer, an idea that was proposed was the person was trying to take the items from Paul Stine, the keys, the wallet, and a piece of Paul Stine's bloody shirt, and his body was pushed toward the floorboards so that the assailant wouldn't get blood on his pants, and when he'd be walking away and we wouldn't be dripping blood anywhere. So very, very methodical, and someone who had a very high sense of crime scene awareness at the Stine murder. But with the Domingos-Edwards crimes that took place in 1963, I can't overlook those differences. And I mean, my gut instinct tells me that this one should be like a 9 out of 10. But just based on all of these unexplained, what would be the word, inconsistencies, then I have to give it a 7.9 out of 10. There was a very interesting exchange that was written in the comments section here on this channel. I think it was on that episode, the Domingos-Edwards murders, but it was between Jamie Hendrickson and Tom Voigt. And Jamie Hendrickson was pointing out these differences and also explaining that is it possible that Linda Edwards' swimsuit was cut like at the beach and not at that seaside shack or in the creek bed where she was gunned down, but like the person approached them with the gun drawn, holds them up at gunpoint, has Robert Domingos tied up, and he was planning to rape Linda Edwards, and then Robert Domingos was able to get free, punch him in the face, and they tried to run away, and then they were gunned down and murdered. Tom Voigt's response to that was simply that there is no evidence of rape. And I completely agree that that's true. And I mean, I don't think any party is explaining that there was any evidence of rape. Jamie Hendrickson replied by saying that, of course not, but is it possible that the perpetrator contemplated rape? And this seems like it would be something that wouldn't be in the Zodiac's wheelhouse. In this instance, I would definitely lean toward more the comments that Jamie Hendrickson was making, not saying for a second that there was any attempted rape that was even remotely successful, but did the assailant contemplate raping Linda Edwards? Here's another piece of evidence that really holds up the investigation. When Linda Edwards' body was dragged to the seaside shack, she was dragged along her back, whereas Robert Domingos was dragged along his stomach. So I think that that also further complicates that, and people still aren't certain to this day, was that swimsuit cut while she was in the shack, and was this just something perverted that the assailant wanted to do so that he could look at her, or was this perhaps just a perverted gesture where he wanted to fondle her breasts or something, or was this also just like that, much as Jamie had written out, is it possible that he had contemplated rape? If so, that absolutely does not sound like the Zodiac killer. So that is just something that I wanted to share. So I give that one a 7.9 out of 10. Now, I haven't done an exact episode on this one, but the murder of Ray Davis took place in 1962 in Oceanside, California. And until I put out an exact episode, I can't talk too much on this, but Ray Davis was the taxi driver that was murdered, and then there are some suspicious circumstances that happened around around the after events of the murder of Ray Davis. I'm just going to say very briefly, I will give that one a 7 out of 10, but perhaps there will be a future episode on the murder of Ray Davis. Moving on to the next one, in an absolute opposite direction, I would like to talk about the Santa Rosa hitchhiker slayings that took place in the early 1970s, including the murder of Kim Wendy Allen, which I was talking about recently on the channel. This one, I can give a much larger explanation, and that is that this one is going to be a 3 out of 10, because there are some similarities between the perpetrator in the Santa Rosa case as opposed to the Zodiac killer. The victims were hog-tied like the way that Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were tied up at Lake Berryessa. The victims were also targeted in a way which seems like it was a power-tripping dominance move, but the big differences are the victims were once again moved to different dump sites. It's even possible in the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murders that the victims were carried up to 100 yards from where the perpetrator had parked a car, and then carrying the body like 100 yards or 200 yards. The Zodiac killer simply did not do that. It really is something that we can say is quite similar amongst all the canonical crimes, whether it's Lake Herman Road, Blue Rock Springs, Lake Berryessa, or the Paul Stein murder. The victims weren't transported anywhere. And of course there are going to be some theories out there, like Ray Grant said something about how the victims may have been abducted prior to Lake Herman Road, but I mean, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were found by their car. That is something else that isn't widely debated. So the Santa Rosa hitchhiker things also involves rape, which, I mean, to use that expression again, is not in the Zodiac killer's wheelhouse. So that one gets a 3 out of 10. And Robert Graysmith was actually a very large proponent of the theory that the Zodiac killer had also committed the Santa Rosa hitchhiker slayings because he was trying to blame it on Arthur Lee Allen. But here's something else, though, that might just blow your mind. The Zodiac did not target hitchhikers. okay, two people who are alone, sitting in a car somewhere, or maybe even somebody like Paul Stein who's driving a car. Cars are very, very central to the Zodiac Killer mystery. However, the Zodiac did not just pick up pedestrians and abduct them on the side of the road. And I think that's a very good transition into the next one to talk about, the Kathleen Johns incident that took place on March 22nd of 1970. Now this one, I'm going to have to give it a 6 out of 10. So you heard that Sheri Jo Bates would be an 8, Domingos-Edwards 7.9, a 6 out of 10 for the Kathleen Johns. Also, the Zodiac Killer did not abduct people. Kathleen Johns was the woman who was driving on Highway Route 132, and the man says, "Your wheel is loose," and he comes out. He tries to do something to her car, then the wheel falls off again. He says, "Oh, I guess it was worse than I thought." And she gets into the car with him. And if I recall what Michael Cole wrote in his book, that there was something in the Zodiac letter when he said that Kathleen Johns was driving a station wagon, and that info was not available to the press, therefore it must have been the real killer. I'm not quite sure what he was talking about. In fact, I could either go back and read that section, or but when I was reading the letter that was mailed in, taking credit for the John's abduction, I don't recall that exact line, but I can double check that one for a future episode. But something else to point out: there was also a baby that was present, the young child that is present with the Kathleen Johns abduction, and the Zodiac Killer didn't commit crimes in front of any young children, to the best of our knowledge. In the canonical crimes, no children are present. Also, Kathleen Johns' car is set on fire, and yes, of course, there's a famous "by rope, by knife, by gun, by fire" that was mailed in on the Halloween card. This actually could be a signature in regards to the Domingos-Edwards murders that we were talking about at the beginning, because the Domingos-Edwards murders in 1963 it's one of the few times when all of those elements are in place, like cutting Linda Edwards' swimsuit with a knife, attempting to set the seaside shack on fire, firing a gun, as well as tying up the victims with rope, by knife, by gun, by fire. It's all there. So that some people think that it's a starting point, or they think that it's that the Lake Berryessa stabbing was paying homage to that, or the Halloween card is paying homage to the Gaviota shooting. But with the canonical crimes, the cars were not set on fire at Blue Rock Springs or Lake Berryessa. At Lake Berryessa, the perpetrator took the time to write a message on the car door that has the Zodiac symbol and Vallejo, the dates of Zodiac activity, and writes the words "by knife," excuse me. Well, the Zodiac didn't set anybody's car on fire then, nor at Blue Rock Springs, nor at Lake Herman Road, and definitely not in Presidio Heights. And of course, the murderer wouldn't have done that in any of those locations, because it would have drawn an enormous amount of attention to himself. I mean, Highway Route 132, which is very isolated. Mind you, we pulled that up on Google Maps before, but those are also just things that do not seem consistent with any of the behavior of the Zodiac Killer. And some people would perhaps think that their suspect is a psychotic and he's just unpredictable, or they might think that their suspect is a high-functioning paranoid schizophrenic, and that could explain some of the differences that are associated with all of these inconsistencies of a serial killer. High-functioning paranoid schizophrenic, someone of above-average intelligence, but they are not committing crimes in any particular pattern-based way because of their mental issues. But I do have to give the Kathleen Johns incident a 6 out of 10. And to move on to a different one, recently on the channel I've been talking a lot about the murder of Joan Webster in Boston, Massachusetts, that took place in 1981. Joan Webster had disappeared from Boston Logan Airport, and she was never seen again until her remains were discovered in 1990. And the suspects in this one, who are Zodiac Killer suspects, are Michael O'Hare, who was accused by Gareth Penn, and then Gareth Penn goes on to become a suspect himself, the researcher that becomes a suspect. With the murder of Joan Webster, I have to give this one a 2 out of 10. Very low chance that this is Zodiac related. Joan Webster was bludgeoned in the back of the head. The Zodiac Killer didn't do things like that. Joan Webster's items were, like her personal items, were taken and scattered around the northeastern part of America, for lack of a better term. The Zodiac really didn't throw people's items around, or with the exception of taking Paul Stein's shirt and the wallet and the keys, but they weren't discovered like a month later or something to that effect. So there are all of these differences in the murder of Joan Webster, and this one really becomes a alleged Zodiac crime because of Gareth Penn in his book Time 17, in which he accused Michael O'Hare of being the Zodiac killer as well as committing the murder of Joan Webster. I do confess, and I said this in the last Joan Webster episode, that I mean, something about that composite, though, in comparison to Gareth Penn, is something that I can't get away from. However, I really do not believe that the Zodiac killer murdered Joan Webster, so I'm giving this one a 2 out of 10. But also, for the blunt force trauma should not be downplayed. Joan Webster had a cracked rib as well. But here's another point. Her body was put into a trash bag and buried on a place called Chabaco Road. The Zodiac killer didn't bury the bodies of the victims. The Zodiac killer also didn't strike anyone in the back of the head with a blunt object. At Lake Herman Road, Blue Rock Springs, and the Paul Stein murder, they were all shot, and at Lake Berryessa, they were stabbed. Cecilia Shepard passed away from her injuries, and Brian Hartnell survived. I think it's highly unlikely that the Zodiac killer had anything to do with the murder of Joan Webster. To a different part of the country, I just want to briefly touch upon the 1957 murder of Otto Fossum, and this is not an unsolved case. We know the name of the perpetrator. His name was Donald Lee Booyock. He murdered Otto Fossum in 1957, shooting him 5 times. The bullets penetrated his chest and neck, and shortly after, Donald Lee Booyock was apprehended, sentenced to life in prison, ended up serving 11 years of his life sentence just prior to the Lake Herman Road murders. Donald Lee Booyock was out of jail. I believe it's 3 days before the Lake Herman Road murders in December of 1968. December 17th, he gets out of jail, out of Deer Lodge prison nonetheless, and then would have allegedly made his way to California. I'm going to give this one also a 2 out of 10 because I just do not believe that Donald Lee Booyock was the Zodiac killer. He didn't really have a lot of education. He had a 9th grade education at best. And even though he was very well versed in things like literature, particularly science fiction, and a big fan of movies, I don't necessarily believe that Donald Lee Booyock would have had the mental faculties to create something like the Zodiac Killer mystery with all of its criminal expertise, for lack of a better term. And if you think that Donald Lee Booyock was the Zodiac Killer, then everything that I have said before 1968 is a 0 out of 10 on your list. The murder of Reed Davis, Domingos-Edwards, the murder of Sheri Jo Bates, all of these would be a 0 out of 10 because, as we said, 1957 to 1968, Donald Lee Booyock was in jail in Deer Lodge Prison. He was from Roundup, Montana, but he was in Deer Lodge Prison in Montana, incarcerated, serving 11 years of that life sentence. The murder of Otto Fossum is very tragic, and he was someone who was very well loved and well respected by his fellow members of the community. And they said, though, when he was in the ambulance going to the hospital, his last words were, "Take it easy, guys." And he was still remembered many decades after he was murdered by Donald Lee Booyock. But so I also give this one a 2 out of 10. Now, moving on to something a little bit different. This will be the Tate LaBianca murders. In fact, we can just add in all of the other Zodiac Manson connection. And in the past, when we were looking at Zodiac killer suspects, as Socialist said, there are 2 episodes on the channel that deal with the Zodiac killer suspect ratings. I gave the Zodiac Manson connection a 0.5 out of 10, but it really isn't just the Tate LaBianca murders that took place in 1969, because it's also the murder of Gary Hinman, the murder of Shorty Shea, and I would invite somebody like Howard Davis, author of the Zodiac Manson Connection, to weigh in on this as much as he wants, but I still have to give it a 0.5 out of 10. I do not believe that anyone from the Manson family went on to murder the 5 canonical Zodiac killer victims, only because of, I really have to play the outrageousness card here. And a lot of the Zodiac Manson connection is centered on an individual named Bruce Davis, who is a Zodiac killer suspect for more than just Howard Davis. Bill Nelson is also a large proponent of this. But there was that blog that we read off one time in the Zodiac Manson Conspiracy video, where I don't even know who he was, some anonymous blogger is putting forward his Zodiac killer theory that 3 different members of the Manson family committed the Zodiac crimes and taken their role in the Tate LaBianca murders, the murder of Gary Hinman, the murder of Shorty Shea. So the Zodiac Manson connection still gets a 0.5 out of 10. Just based on well, I think it's a lot of wild speculation involved with that one. So, thank you to everybody who has listened to this first segment here, and please stay tuned because we will continue with trying to identify the criminal activities of the Zodiac Killer right after this quick message. Bum ba bum 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 ba bum 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 ba bum bum bum. At this time, I would like to talk about some of the ways in which you can help Black Box Online Radio. This channel relies on your support, and the best way you can help out is just by listening to some more content. If you like what you hear, you can hit that like button, subscribe, and share with your friends on social media. But I should also say that Black Box Online Radio now has a Teespring page, and there will be some links in the description box. Please feel free to check out some of the merchandise that is available. Almost all sizes and colors are listed. So, you can also help out by going over to the Zodiac Killer channel and watching the documentary series Obsession into Darkness, parts 1, 2, and 3. I was one of the contributors for that, and you can see some other great Zodiac content on the Zodiac Killer channel. And yes, there will be a part 4 of Obsession into Darkness at some point in the future. And for now, let's get back to the show. Okay, hello, and we are back. So in this segment, we're going to be going backward in time, reverse chronological order, and look at some other alleged murders that have been attributed to the Zodiac Killer. I would like to begin with the 1967 murder of Nikki Benedict. On the 1st of May 1967, Nikki Benedict was walking home down a pathway when she was attacked and murdered, stabbed by knife at around 6:30 p.m. This one has been attributed to the Zodiac Killer, but a very particular suspect becomes one of the is mentioned in certain theories, and his name is Gareth Penn. And if anyone would like to hear a more extended discussion on this one, there's an episode on this channel called The Murder of Nikki Benedict, Gareth Penn Connections. But Nikki Benedict was walking home actually after seeing a friend. She was 14 years old, and the connections to Gareth Penn revolve around the number 184. If you add up the alphanumeric value of Gareth Penn's name, like G would be the letter 7. The letter G would be the number 7, excuse me. Already you see I'm a little bit bad with math and numbers. I'm not like Gareth. But yeah, the letter G is the number 7. The letter A is the number 1. The letter R is the number 18. And if you go all the way through Gareth Sewell Penn, the alphanumeric value of his name will total up to 184, like 7 plus 1 is 8, plus 18 is 26, and goes on and on and on. Oh, look there, the first 3 letters of his name, G-A-R, that totals up to 26, and that gives you the Z for Zodiac, the 26th letter of the alphabet. But the murder of Sheri Jo Bates occurred on October 30th of 1966. 184 days later, there is the murder of Nikki Benedict in Poway, California. Now, this one is similar in some ways, a little bit different. It definitely appears to be somewhat of a more calculated crime that took place in Poway, as opposed to the murder of Sheri Jo Bates, which seemed like someone was unleashing a lot of furiosity and rage, and it could be what Michael Cole said, that this is the Zodiac in his truest form, or there could be 2 different killers, very possibly, for the murder of Sheri Jo Bates and the murder of Nikki Benedict. But Gareth Penn's own rebuttal to this, because Gareth is not only a suspect but also a researcher, is that there are not 184 days between the Riverside stabbing and the Poway stabbing. There are 183, and he does this by saying that October 30th was the 303rd day of the year, and May 1st was the 121st day of the year, and it's 183 days. But Joe from the Zodiac Killer Insight series very clearly just points out that Gareth Penn is he is not counting October 30th as a day itself, and he has some good reasoning for that. Joe from the Zodiac Killer Insight series is, because he pointed out that when you ask yourself how many days are there in a year, you say 365, you include January 1st, the day in which you start. And there are also just some other signatures that have been attributed to the number 184. It's a repetitive pattern. I'd say that the other thing that really, really stands out to me about the murder of Nikki Benedict is the chronology, because no matter who thinks that Sheri Jo Bates is a genuine Zodiac killer victim, it becomes difficult to explain this 2-year gap in Zodiac activity between 1966 and 1968. More than 2 years, really. It's really about 2 years and 1 month and 3 weeks. I mean, once again, I don't know any math, so please, those are just estimations, like rough figures. But there's this 2-year gap in between Riverside and Lake Herman Road. But the murder of Nikki Benedict would simply provide an alternative, saying, no, there isn't. There was this other murder that took place by knife, and there it was, that Zodiac letter that said, Riverside work, but only the easy ones, meaning that it would be a little bit more difficult to figure out what happened. But the murder of Nikki Benedict only gets a 4 out of 10 because I can't see anything other than speculation, looking at numeric clues. I don't see any Zodiac letter that takes credit for the murder of Nikki Benedict directly, not to mention that there also appears to be no other Zodiac victim from Poway that I can think of off the top of my head. Or how about this? A crime that occurred by knife at 6:30 p.m. Many people would notice the similarity between that one and Lake Berryessa, where the Zodiac wrote 6:30 on the car door after stabbing Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard. So you have two crimes that took place at 6:30 p.m. that were committed by knife. But I think that you would need a lot more than that to say that this was the Zodiac killer. I mean, those are very simple observations, and those are simple connections. And to the credit of Joe from the Zodiac Killer Insight series, he does have a lot more about the murder of Nikki Benedict, and he has an episode about her on his channel, the Zodiac Killer Insight series. He has also confronted Gareth Penn directly about being the murderer of Nikki Benedict, and that's how Gareth Penn was able to provide that explanation that no, it's not 184 days, it's 183. But also, the most notable thing about that is Gareth Penn simply does not deny it. He'll talk about some things like the numbers, or he'll talk about, like why he thinks that there is other evidence. I mean, he'll say that there's the shoe size at Lake Berryessa was 10.5 and he wears a size 12. But he doesn't flat out say, no, I did not commit these murders. And that's something that I always look for when people are being interviewed or investigated. I mean, are they just going to say a flat out, no, this wasn't me, and here's why? Instead, someone's accusing him of being a murderer. Someone's accusing him of finding this numerical signature, the alphanumeric value of his name, and his simple response was, are you familiar with permutations and combinations? And I'm like, what kind of answer is that? Why not just say, no, I didn't kill these people? But to look at a different Zodiac killer suspect on the absolute extreme opposite end of the intelligence spectrum from Gareth Penn, let's go to someone named Sandy, because there's an alleged Zodiac killer crime that took place in 1963. We've already gone through the Domingos-Edwards murders that took place on June 4th of 1963. The day before, on the 3rd of June, there is the murder of Vernon Smith that was almost certainly committed by someone named Sandy. There are 3 people who are planning to rob this individual named Vernon Smith, J.C. Reed Jr., and James Coleman, and there was someone using the alias of Sandy. That's the name that he went by. And they're trying to rob Vernon Smith, and allegedly, Sandy just snapped into a moment of homicidal hysteria, a moment of mania, and just started stabbing Vernon Smith. Maybe he was laughing while he did it, but it seems like that is somewhat alleged. And some people to this day believe that Sandy murdered Vernon Smith on the 3rd of July. Then on the 3rd of June, the 3rd of June 1963, Sandy murders Vernon Smith, leaves J.C. Reed and James Coleman, makes his way to a seaside shack near Gaviota State Park, near Santa Barbara, where Robert, Domingos, and Linda Edwards were going to go for the afternoon. Sandy is spending the night and much of the day in the seaside shack. In all reality, he was probably awake all night and then sleeping all day until the early afternoon. Encounters Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards, commits that murder, then, 5 years later, goes on to become the Zodiac Killer. What does the murder of Vernon Smith get? A 3 out of 10. If the murder of Nikki Benedict gets a 4, then the murder of Vernon Smith gets a 3 out of 10 for likelihood of any type of Zodiac involvement, for the simple reason that it really appears that Sandy would have been too small to have also gone through with the Domingos-Edwards murders. And here's something, though. It's not only about the physical specifications, because there's a lower likelihood of this being true, because the pieces can only fit together in a more specific way now, because it would make so much less sense if you're going to accuse Sandy of committing the Domingos-Edwards murders, but not the murder of Vernon Smith, or vice versa, because he's actually, Sandy was convicted in absentia for the Domingos-Edwards murders based on an article that Playtime had shared with me. But then to say that he did some of the crimes but not all of them, it's like the pieces only can fit together in this very certain way, that Sandy murdered Vernon Smith, Sandy murdered Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards, and then Sandy murdered the Zodiac Killer victims. But it gets a 3 out of 10 because I do believe that Sandy would have been perhaps too small to move Robert Domingos' body the way he did. Shooting a man dead, dragging him 30 yards, from the creek bed to the seaside shack where the bodies were placed, and then the attempt to set it on fire. Robert Domingos was a football player. He seems like he was described as somewhat of a big guy. Sandy is probably between 150 and 170 pounds, at only around 5'8" or 5'9", maybe even as short as 5'7" or 5'6". He's a smaller guy, and even the whole concept of him trying to get into this fist fight altercation with Robert Domingos, Robert Domingos allegedly punched the perpetrator in the face, and it's highly possible that Domingos could have overpowered him if they were actually in this physical altercation, but the expectation is that that Sandy would have had a gun if he did commit the Gaviota Beach shooting. There are a few explanations about how he could have obtained that firearm. As we said, Vernon Smith was stabbed to death on June 3rd of 1963. So, if people think that Sandy was the Zodiac Killer, I think the most sensible explanation is that either he bought it illegally, or what is perhaps more likely, made his way to the seaside shack and found a gun that somebody had stashed there, because there are not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 boxes of .22 caliber ammunition that are found in the seaside shack, and they trace the lot number back to a military base that was in the area. So you have 4 boxes of ammo. That sounds like it's been stashed there in the seaside shack, and definitely somebody like Sandy, who's just moving from place to place like a drifter, who didn't have a gun at the time that he left J.C. Reed and James Coleman, did not have he did not have the gun in his possession. So if he found that, then that would give him another opportunity to commit the Gaviota Beach shooting. But that's just guesswork. There's also very little definitive material to tie Sandy to that. No witness sightings, of course. That's another strike against him. But it's the probability of it being true gets lower and lower, because you would have to connect all of these different elements together, and it would be nearly impossible to say that the Zodiac Killer did not commit the murder of Vernon Smith if Sandy is your guy. And the last one that will be on this list is the 1962 Escape from Alcatraz, which is the subject of the book My Dance with the Zodiac Killer by David W. Kuchar, also known as David Gold. And the Zodiac suspects in this one are Frank Lee Morris, as well as John and Clarence Anglin, the Anglin brothers. David Gold has a YouTube channel as well, in addition to his book, My Dance with the Zodiac Killer, when he talks about how he believes that Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers were involved with a very famous Escape from Alcatraz, but Frank Morris was also the Phantom Killer from Texarkana, 1946, 1962 Escape from Alcatraz, but the Phantom Killer operated from February to May of 1946. And then he was the Phantom Killer, Escape from Alcatraz, then goes on to participate in some of the Zodiac Killer murders, not all of them, because the Lake Berryessa stabbing was orchestrated by one of the Anglin brothers, and then but they're all participants in this, and David Gold claims that Frank Morris has told them all about this. He sat down and walked them through all the symbology associated with the Zodiac Killer mystery. Once again, his book is called My Dance with the Zodiac Killer, or you can watch his YouTube videos for free. But then his suspects go on to participate in the D.B. Cooper hijacking, or skyjacking, as we should say. But this one, I mean, if I could give something a 0, I would give it a 0, but let's give this a 0.01 out of 10. I guess that's a 1/100th of a possible point of being true. But I should point out that it's not only David Gold who has a suspect that is connected to the 1962 Escape from Alcatraz. Frank Morris is the participant in that. But we've talked about Robert Kimball on the channel before. That's an alias ascribed to someone who was a merchant marine who is accused of being the architect of the Escape from Alcatraz, and then goes on to be an active participant in the Zodiac Killer mystery. But I just wanted to say that variant of it might be a little bit higher on the list, but David Gold's whole My Dance with the Zodiac Killer, 0.01 out of 10. I don't think that needs too much of an explanation why. It's just linking together all major forms of unknown, unsolved mysteries throughout the 20th century and blaming them on one person. There's some other people that get pulled into this, and we can even add some additional crimes to the list, like, for example, the Black Dahlia, whom Steve Hodel says the same person committed the Black Dahlia murder of Elizabeth Short in the 1940s, and then went on to commit the murders of, various murders throughout the 20th century, and culminating with the Zodiac crimes in 1968 and 69. That was all done by George Hodel. Ed Edwards is also listed as a massive super criminal. Once you begin to link together many different worldly events and blame it on one person, there's a lower likelihood of it being true, because you almost have to make this type of assumption in your mind. It's like they're taking true facts and then they're creating this fictitious connection to unite them all together. And there are many people out there who do insinuate that there is a Phantom Killer, Zodiac Killer connection, because they notice the similarities, the hooded perpetrator who's targeting lovers' lanes, deviating from the pattern on the fifth victim. But I don't personally believe that. I think that's a little bit of overactive imagination. Or how about this, though? Somebody is trying to look at the similarities between two true crime cases, and then they make the assumption that because two true crime cases are similar, therefore it must be the same person. And it's not to say that someone can't learn about these things. I genuinely do believe that the Zodiac Killer was familiar with the Phantom Killer from 1946. I also believe the Zodiac Killer studied Jack the Ripper, and perhaps had knowledge of the Sheri Jo Bates murder. I mean, I'm almost certain the Zodiac Killer was well aware of the murder of Sheri Jo Bates in 1966. But some people even think that the Zodiac wrote the letters, the Riverside Confession, and the Bates Had to Die, There Will Be More letters, but did not actually do the crime. And all I can say to that one is it's possible, except so much for everything that I said at the beginning about how reading off that comment from Chevy Cat Black about the Bates letters contain personal, intimate connections addressing her by name, whereas the Zodiac letters do not address the victims by name. Well, anyway, thank you for listening to this discussion here about the different Zodiac Killer crimes. Thank you to anyone who has made it all the way to the end. If there was a crime that you did not hear about that you would like to hear more about in the future, you can say that in the comments section below. I need to also point out that in a Socialist's comment, there was a request to talk about the Swindle murders as well as the disappearance of Donna Lass. And much like the murder of Ray Davis, I'm not very familiar with those, and I couldn't even begin to give any solid discussion on that. I think those would first need their own standalone episodes, and I would love to learn more about the Swindle murders, the murders of Johnny Ray and Joyce Swindle, as well as the disappearance of Donna Lass. Donna Lass might be able to provide an enormous amount of insight into the Zodiac Killer world from the little bit that I have learned about that mystery, but hopefully there will be some future episodes on those two incidents as well as the murder of Ray Davis from 1962. So if there's another crime that you did not hear about yet that you would like to learn more about, please put your idea in the comments section below. And you can follow the show on Instagram, BlackBoxNed88, as well as you follow me on Facebook. That link is posted in the description box. Anybody can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio@AOL.com. And that's all for me now. I will see you on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.